this much time.
Good evening. The time is now 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call the Beloit City Council meeting to order at this time. May we have a roll call, please?
Roll call shows all councilors present.
Thank you. Second item is a pledge of allegiance. May we all stand? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3 is special orders of the day and announcements. We have none this evening. Before we go on to item 4, I would ask if there's anyone in attendance this evening that would like to speak on item 11B. Under reports from boards and city officers, in 11B is a resolution providing for the sale of approximately $4,325,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds 2011B. Seeing no one wanting to speak on that, I'm going to move that item up under special orders of the day and announcements. We have an individual here who's from out of town, and we want to get her up, and so she doesn't have to be here all night. Thank you. Mr. York, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate your moving this up on the agenda for Dawn's behalf. She does have a ways to drive back home this evening. Several weeks ago, we presented to the council a refunding opportunity on some of the city's general obligation debt, and after that sale, I contacted Ellers, our financial advisor, and asked them to look at other outstanding debt of the city to see if there are any other possibilities out there to refund some of this debt at lower interest rates since the current financial market is so favorable as far as interest rates on municipal debt. And they did take a look at some of our outstanding bond issues and state trust fund loans, and did come up with 4 outstanding issues that they felt, based on the current market, were eligible for a savings, refunding this debt at this time. And based on their analysis, there's a potential actual savings to the city of over $250,000, a little bit over 5% savings. And they're here this evening to make a presentation to the council. It's our recommendation to proceed with this savings at this time to take advantage of these lower interest rates. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dawn Gunderson. She's with Ellers and Associates, the city's financial advisor, and she'll go through more of the detail of the proposed financing.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. You've each been provided with a copy of what's referred to as a pre-sale report. This relates to $4,325,000 of taxable general obligation refunding bonds. If you turn to page 1, there's an executive summary talking a little bit about the details of the issue in terms of the call features and the city's outstanding obligations overall, your current rating, the fact that we will do this as a competitive bond sale. We will hold that sale on September 7th, bring it back with final sale results on that date, and close it on December 8th. As Paul mentioned, we were here a while ago doing a advanced refinancing of several of your tax-exempt issues. We analyze the market on an ongoing basis and monitor savings analysis. At that time, there was a substantial savings on a tax advance basis or a refinancing advance. We had looked at this taxable issue, the GO taxable at that time, and as an advance refinancing, it didn't provide you significant savings as an issue in and of itself. As the timing as of now, we'd be looking at doing that as a current refinancing, hence the closing after December 8th of the issue so that we can call those bonds on a current basis. And we continually monitor and work with staff in doing that, and they had suggested that we also look at all the state trust fund loans as well. And these state trust fund loans are taxable issues because they were financing many TIF projects. The capital appreciation bond that we refinanced a few years ago, a portion of that was done with a state trust fund as well. So this entire issue is considered taxable. It monitors on a slightly different interest rate than tax-exempt bonds do. And again, the timing of it is appropriate doing this now, even more so than having done it in combination with the earlier issues. So with that being said, the first 2 pages then are a summary of the issue. The 3rd page is the timing. As I said, we will bring this back to council for an award of the sale on November 7th and closing on December 8th. And to show the details of this savings analysis, moving then to page 4, is the sources and uses, or the sizing for the issue. It identifies the 4 issues that we're going to undertake and refinance at this time. A taxable issue from 2003, 3 state trust fund loans, 1 from 2005, 1 from 2007, and 1 from 2008, brings us down with the issuance expenses to the sizing of $4,325,000. The most important analysis then is on page 5 of this handout, where we look at the savings estimate on an annual basis. The long pullout schedule has those 4 issues on the far left under the yellow columns, the amount that is refinanced. Since these are current call, there is still a portion of the 2003 issue that will be paid in 2012, identified there, and then the savings analysis is comparing the principal and interest on all those old issues combined to the principal and interest projected for the refinancing issue. And so the far right column on this schedule shows the projection of the annual savings. And you'll see by undertaking this refinancing, there'll be approximately $20,000 on an annual basis each year through the life of the issue. Again, most of this has been projects supported by your tax increment districts, and the revenue stream from those tax increment districts will actually recognize the savings on these on this refunding. So are there any questions that you'd like to ask of me?
At this time, if I can get a motion to get it on the table. Is there a motion? Motion by Luke, is there a second? Second by Nuno, sorry. Any questions from councilors, comments, concerns? Councilor Vander Bogart.
I think you made the point, Ms. Gunderson, but I want to make sure people understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not any new debt. This is refinancing old debt, and we're going to save, by doing this, about $250,000 over the life of the bond. Is that
That's
right?
absolutely correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, there is a motion and a second, and we would need a roll call vote on this.
DeForest. Haynes. Van de Bogart.
Aye.
Levy.
Aye.
Lupke. Noonan. Spreitzer.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, we are now at item 4, which is public hearings, and we'll take item 4B first, please.
2012 Community Development Block Grant Proposed Budget and Annual Action Plan. The Community Development Authority recommended approval, 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Can you?
Ms. Christensen, please.
To maintain its eligibility for community development block grant funding, each year the city must submit an annual action plan and CDBG budget. The plan includes specific objectives for housing, homelessness, public housing, and community development, and it also includes information on the CDBG process, affordable housing, and special needs population. The annual plan also must indicate how we intend to allocate our block grant funds. The process for preparing that budget included applications being made available to agencies interested in applying for the funds, them presenting their application to the CDA, and then the CDA makes its recommendation to you on how the CDBG funds should be allocated. This first slide shows the public service funds. Essentially what we are budgeting, we are anticipating budgeting for block grant funding this year is $600,000 in new grant dollars. In 2011, we were cut from about $700,000 to 614. The federal budget has not been approved, so we do not know the amount that we're receiving, but we are estimating conservatively, so we're estimating 600,000. We always feel it's better to give people more money than have to tell them we're cutting funds. The first category of funding, the one that has the most need, the most demand, is public services. And these were the 12 agencies that applied for funding this year. The column to the right indicates how much was recommended by the CDA to the City Council. It's $20,000 for the Community Action Inc. for their Supportive Services Program, $7,000 for Family Services Program The Key, $7,000 for Family Services Emergency Housing and Case Management for Homeless Victims. That's basically the Domestic Violence Center. $20,000 for the Greater Beloit Home Companion Registry, $5,000 for Family Services Homeless Prevention Program, $7,500 for Hands of Faith, $20,000 for Merrill Community Center, $0 for Meals on Wheels, $19,295 for NHS's Home Buyer Education and Foreclosure Prevention Program, $20,000 for State Land Literacy Council, $7,000 for the Voluntary Action Center's Senior Shore Service, and then nothing for the YWCA Women's Empowerment Center. And then the second set of programs, the public service section is capped at 15%. The remaining dollars can receive the other funds. The CDA did recommend $191,965 for program administration, $130,625 for the code enforcement program, $60,000 for the Merrill Housing Initiative, and $84,615 for the Housing Rehab Revolving Loan Fund. At the council workshop today, there was discussion among the councilors of allocating additional dollars, perhaps from the program administration budget, to the Housing Rehab Revolving Loan Fund to allow us to pull some salaries that are currently in the general fund and put them into CDBG. So we will look at how to reallocate those dollars and bring you an amended budget when it comes before you for approval on November 7th. And then this slide shows the estimated program income. As a general rule of thumb, council has typically allowed these are programs that create income, and you've allowed that program income to remain with the programs. CDA did recommend that. The estimate is $40,000 for the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund, $209,825 for the code enforcement program, and this is essentially the rental permit fees, $100,000 for the Housing Rehab Revolving Loan Fund, and then $10,000 for neighborhood housing services, and that gives you a total 2012 proposed CDBG budget of $959,825.
Thank you.
And this is your night for the public hearing. And we'll come back to you for action at your next meeting on November 7th.
Okay, and before we start the discussion, ask for a motion. Councilor DeForest, you have something?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I need to recuse myself. I thought the home budget was going to be going first. I work for one of these agencies, so I need to recuse
Okay.
myself.
Thank you. So no motion.
No motion. Public hearing.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to open up the public hearing for item 4B. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4B, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. We ask you that if you're going to speak, you refrain from personal attacks on the council members and the staff. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I will be monitoring this, so I'm sure we have a lot of people that would like to speak under several items on the public hearing, so I'm going to ask you to please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And as we move forward in the public hearing process, we're going to be asking that individuals that come forward, if you hear someone that has already stated what you state, that you want to say, that you limit your comments, or even individuals that come forward bring in new discussion to the conversation. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing for item 4B. Is there anyone wishing to speak on item 4B this evening? Anyone wishing to speak on item 4B this evening? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4B this evening? Seeing none, I would like to close the public hearing on that item and ask any counselor if they have any comments or questions of staff. Councilor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Julie, I'd like to thank you and everyone on the CDA. It's so difficult to go through this process every year. Every single one of these organizations is in need of support from the community. And it's so fortunate that we are able to get these federal funds to support this. And having sat on that with you, I know it's very challenging to decide how to distribute them. I have one question on one of the groups, but I wanted to again thank you also for funding it fully at 15%. During these very challenging economic times, those folks that are in most need or have challenges, this is the time that we need to be watching out and taking care of them as a caring community. So thank you very much for that. I was just kind of curious, so Meals on Wheels, why did the CDA decide not to fund that at all?
Dave and Jim are on the committee, so maybe they can jump into. I think one of the issues was not funding new programs when there's so many programs that met crucial needs. But I don't know if Jim and Dave, if you have more to say than that.
I don't really recall the exact details of the discussion, but I think that was part of it. I think the other part was that it was a new agency and they had other alternatives for some raising of funds. Both Dave and I have volunteered with them, I think, so there was a connection there. But
it wasn't stopping the funding for Meals on Wheels. It was specifically to Scoville Hall. We had other alternatives.
That's right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Julie, I have a couple for you. I see there's a lot of agencies that address the issue of homelessness, and I would like to, as part of the plan and developing this, is that we put in there something to address the homelessness for males. I know there's a lot for families and for women and children, but we don't have a lot of agencies that address that issue of the male population. So if we could put that into the plan, and then also maybe look to team up with the school district, because I think they also have a list of how many students may be homeless, because I want to make sure that as we move forward that we are addressing that issue. I think it's a huge issue out there, and a lot of people may not know about it, but I think we need to make sure that we'll be allocating some funds to agencies that address that issue. But not only that, but follow up very closely on those agencies to make sure that if they say this is what they're going to be doing with the funds, that we are seeing an impact in that area.
We are monitoring them every year to make sure that they're doing what they say they were going to do in their application.
Okay.
So we go out there. CDA actually received a copy of the monitoring summaries from the monitoring we did this year. So we go out and visit all the agencies and look at their participant files and look at everything to make sure that they're doing what they say they will do. However, homelessness is not an easy problem to solve. So it doesn't just get fixed overnight.
Right.
We do have staff at both Beloit, Janesville, and the school district and the Homeless Intervention Task Force all working together to try to address issues, the Project 1649 with the homeless kids in the school districts. I think we are actively working on that, even though they're not on a list for funding. They didn't apply for funding. We do have staff actively working on that problem as well, along with school district staff.
All right. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we keep it on the table to make sure that we are doing something to address it. I'm sure we are, but I just want to.
And we'll make sure that both of those are included in the plan before it gets submitted to HUD and before it comes back to you for action at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you. Any other councilor have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we move on to item 4A.
Okay, sure.
We get Councilor DeForest, please.
It's the 2012 Home Investment Partnerships proposed budget. The Community Development Authority recommended approval, 6-0.
Ms. Christensen, please.
In July 2001, the cities of Beloit and Janesville and Rock County formed the Rock County Home Consortium. This allowed us to receive home funds directly from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, similar to how we do block grant. Before that, we were having to apply for funds and actually compete against each other for funds, so this was a good cooperative way to seek funding for Rock County. According to the program guidelines, 15% of the home funds must be allocated to a community housing development organization. According to our agreement with Rock County, those 15% go to a Chodo in Beloit. And this agreement also establishes that the city receives 19% of those dollars. And in 2012, the CDA recommended awarding $105,886 to the city's housing rehab loan program for both homeowner and rental rehab loans, and $83,594 for NHS's acquisition rehab program. And this slide just kind of shows it in a numerical fashion. But at this point, the only community housing development organization that is doing development work in Beloit that is certified as a CHODO is actually NHS, which is why those funds are going to NHS. And they, although it says there, the owner-occupied rehab program, that slide is incorrect. It's actually NHS's acquisition rehab program, because the home regulations don't allow the CHODO funds to be spent on owner-occupied rehab. So that is a mistake on there. It's correct in your staff report, but it's wrong on the slide.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I would like to open up the public hearing for item 4A this evening. Is there anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening? Anyone wishing to speak on item 4A? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening? Seeing none, I would like to close the public hearing and look for, is there any councilor comments, questions, or discussion at this time? Seeing none, that would also come back, right, Julie? Thank you. At this time, we'd like to move on to item 4C.
2012 operating, library, and capital improvements proposed budgets.
Mr. York and Mr. Arp.
I think Mr. York has a brief presentation. Go ahead and open it to comments and questions from the residents and respond as necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me. We did make a fairly detailed presentation to the council 2 weeks ago when we introduced the budget to the council on October the 3rd. And this evening's public hearing, we're just going to very briefly highlight the budget, summarize basically the operating budget for next year. The city's total budget for 2012 is proposed at $92 million. It's an actual decrease over the current year's budget of about $1.3 million, or 1.43%. The general fund portion of the proposed budget at $29.7 million is also a decrease, a little bit over $450,000, 1.5% roughly. The city's other major operating funds are enterprise operations, which include our wastewater treatment fund, our water utility, stormwater, the transit, the ambulance operation, our golf course, and our cemetery operation is proposed at $17.9 million. That's also a decrease of a little bit over $100,000, less than 1%. This chart summarizes the various funds of the city. Again, the operating budget is proposed at $68.8 million. That's a decrease of about $1.8 million, or a little bit over 2.5%. Our internal service funds, which are primarily the city's self-insured health insurance operation, our liability insurance funds, and also our motor pool fund, is proposed to increase about $1.3 million. The total budget at $12.2. Most of this is made up of the city's self-insured health insurance plan for next year, which is the biggest reason for the increase in the internal service funds. We did budget for a 15% increase in health premiums next year, and we do expect claims to be above with the current year budget, which is primarily causing this increase. Our capital improvements budget is also decreasing next year, almost or a little bit over $800,000 at $10.9 million. That's a decrease of about 7%. And again, overall, the budget is approximately $92 million, $1.3 million decrease. This chart sort of gives you some frame of reference of how we got where we are today. When we first began our budget process earlier this year, we asked all the departments to prepare a baseline budget on what each department felt. By the way, this is strictly the general fund here. what each department felt it was going to need in order to fund their operations next year on a fully funded basis. And when the departments submitted those requests back early part of the summer, the total requests that they made was a little bit over $32 million on what each department felt they would need in order to fully fund their operations for next year. Based on our revenue projections, that provided us with about almost a $2.6 million gap in the budget compared to anticipated revenues versus the cost of funding these operations. We eliminated a few items, primarily our contributions that we normally made in the past to our equipment replacement funds, and a few other adjustments, and we got that number down to a $1.7 million difference that we had to make up in cuts to the various departments of the general fund. And those cuts are allocated on a pro rata basis in that green shaded column you can see there on the right. And with those adjustments is how we arrived at the balanced budget that we presented to the council 2 weeks ago, the $29.7 million. This chart sort of gives you a graphical indication of the city's revenues, where the money comes from to fund our general fund operation. As you can see, most of our funds come from aid payments that we receive from primarily the state of Wisconsin. That makes up over 65% of our general fund revenue sources. The next big funding item are the tax categories. That's primarily the property tax. It makes up about 24% of general fund revenue. And the rest of the revenue sources are pretty much made up of charges departments make for services they provide. Some of the fines and forfeitures are money that's brought in by the municipal court. Of course, we have licenses and permits that we issue. And we also earn some money now on our investment of idle city funds. That brings in about $272,000 projected for next year. And this chart gives you an indication of where the money is being spent. And as you'll notice, most of the money goes toward our public safety operations, which are our police and fire departments. They're the two larger departments in the general fund as far as expenditures. Next being the Public Works Department, Finance and Administrative Services, General Government, and then lastly Community Development. But you have almost 2/3 of your budget in the general fund are going toward police and fire operations. And the tax levy that's proposed for next year is $13,474,000. It's an increase of $251,000, and that's primarily to help fund the debt service portion of the tax levy for next year. We're recommending a $300,000 increase in our debt service levy. That's money that's used to pay for the outstanding bonded debt of the city. That's about a 6.5% increase in debt service. The overall levy is increasing just under 2% next year at $251,000, and the impact that will have on the tax rate is an increase of about 18 cents per thousand on the tax rate. And if you consider the average homeowner in the city, the assessed value, we compared next year's average homeowner in the current year's tax bill for that same individual, and it's essentially flat because the average homeowner's assessed value actually decreased again for 2011. So it's pretty much a wash as far as the increase in the tax rate on the average taxpayer in Beloit. This graph here gives you an indication of the tax rate, where it's gone the last several years. As you can see, it has increased fairly steadily here the last 2 or 3 years. And the biggest reason for that is in this next slide. And as you'll notice, the city's property tax base has also decreased fairly significantly the last 2 years. We had about 7.5% decrease last year in our tax base, and this current year it's about a little bit over 3%. So we've lost, pretty close to 11% of our tax base in the last 2 years, and that's the primary reason for that jump you'll see in the property tax, because that's a direct result of the decrease in the assessed values. Tonight we have our public hearing on the budget. Next Monday we have another workshop scheduled, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll start to wrap up where we sort of left off today. There's also a town hall work session next week. I think at this point we're planning on having that at the Rotary Center at I believe it's 6:30 is when that'll start. And then there's one the following evening at Grinnell Hall, another town hall session, and again that one is proposed to start at 6:30. There's certainly time for more workshops if the council desires to have those. At this point, the plan is to place this on the agenda for the November 7th council meeting for council consideration for adoption. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. And before I open it up for public hearing, I just want to make a statement. We were in a workshop all day today, council and city staff, talking about the budget and things that we see or things that we would like to see. And one of the ideas that was brought out in that budget session was the possibility of a snow removal fee. We've talked about this a couple years ago. Council wanted it back on the table just for discussion. I want to let the public know no decision has been made about that. We're just exploring it. We did ask staff to go back, see how many cities are doing this right now, what the potential revenue impact would be, and then also how much it would cost the citizens if we were to put something together like this. We wanted to put it out to the public today, just in case as we continue to have the conversation about it, we want to be upfront and let people know the types of things that we're looking for as we work through this difficult budget process. As I mentioned before, I want to make sure that the public know the decision has not been made. But as we go through the budget process, we're coming up with different ways of looking at seeing what can we do to help get through this tough budget. So with that, I would like to open up the public hearing at this time on item 4C. We did have 3 individuals that wanted to speak under citizens' participation. Mr. Michael McNulty, Mr. Mike Zarrell, and Mr. Beloit Sanders. They all wanted to speak on the budget, so I would ask you at this time that this would be an opportunity for you to speak under this, the public hearing session, and you wouldn't have to wait to the citizens' participation. After that, anyone else who would like to speak under public participation, the public hearing section, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4C?
Members of the council and guests, my name is Michael McNulty. We're all here to talk about the pending budget and to sway or influence your decisions on where to make cuts or which taxes to raise or cut, which departments deserve further scrutiny or consideration. I'm not any different, with the exception being I'm rarely going to spew specific dollar amounts, and I'm not here to point any fingers. All I'm going to ask you to do is consider the Beloit you're going to leave your children and the Beloit vision you're trying to sell to companies or organizations as you ask them to relocate here. Home values are down drastically in many cases. Residents' incomes are down, and more people have to drive further and further to provide even the basic necessities for their families. There are about 35,000 people living in Beloit, and almost a third of them are under the age of 18 years old. More and more, these people are being pushed aside in the name of budget cuts and political correctness. This brings me to the subject of my request. In the short 15 years that I've lived here, I've seen the parks and playgrounds disappearing throughout my side of Beloit, and I assume it's the same throughout the city. I used to take my kids to the park that was where Prairie and East Grand intersect, but it was torn out. It seems almost overnight the swing sets just disappeared. We used to go to the swings in what we refer to as Cemetery Park, but they seem to disappear overnight as well. Now all you can find are little play lots that used to be a house, and that house was torn down and some grass planted, and a little more than a scaled-down version of a jungle gym has been cemented in place. The other place that they can go is Turtle Island, which is not a place for kids to run free due to the high number of children in such a small area. And I understand that some people are advocating Kruger Pool possibly be closed. I want to give you an example. I used to take my kids down to Turtle Creek where we would cool off on a hot summer day with a rope swing that used to hang and you'd go into the creek from it. There'd be 20 to 30 kids there at the time, but in an effort to appease either a homeowner on East Ridge Road who got tired of cutting down the ropes we were putting up so the kids weren't yelling and screaming and having fun in his backyard, you cut down 2 huge oak trees, huge, over 200-year-old oak trees. Beloit has been what's referred to as a tree city since 1987. A lot of people don't know this. Beloit is the longest tree community or tree city consistently in the state of Wisconsin. It has been for 22 years. I don't want to get off on a rant, but you removed yet another venue of summer fun for the children and for hundreds of them. The point I'm making is, what's going to happen when there's nothing else for our kids to do? What are you going to do when there are no diversions or playgrounds or places for the kids to cool off in the summer and the kids aren't in school? You're taking away all forms of recreation. We need to do what we can to engage this population. Almost a full third of our households have children. The pool is for use in the summertime, and it is in the heat of a summer day that is not going to be satisfied by the Beloit Janesville Symphony Orchestra, the Beloit Civic Theater, or the Wright Museum. Kids need to run and swim and jump and play. They don't need another computer camp, and they don't need a shirt and tie from June to September. You need to be spending money to beautify the city at several fronts, and I think we've been doing a very good job. But we're planning for the future, and because you're planning for the future, your plans should include what you're going to do with the children of the people you're trying to attract or whom can't afford to relocate. In closing, I would offer you 2 options that both deserve exploration. First of all, more and more communities are realizing the importance of their pools for their citizenry. If you look at a number of the cities and communities that have taken the next step and moved their outdoor pools either into the high schools or the school complexes in a cooperative arrangement between the schools and the communities. A fantastic example, one that we usually go to the state and conference swim meets, is in Middleton. Maybe it's time for this community to actually move forward and start spending their funds on a better solution rather than taking away options for their families and their children. The second option, our community pool is in an exceptional location and it's very beautiful in its architecture and its surroundings. I'd be willing to bet that there's a group of people available that could figure out better ways to promote its use and create situations to make the pool the center of community functions and planned events as a draw to its possible income ability, rather than just a deterrent or a cost on the city's coffers. Honestly, my kids use the pool because we knew about it and because my kids are swimmers, but aside from that, a person visiting Beloit or a person just moving in here may have no idea we even have a community pool. You don't need to close a pool. You either need to make one big swim complex or you need more funds to promote what we already have, but either way, you need to provide it for summer relief for the generations of our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Sorrell,
Your address also, please, for the record.
1756 Carlisle Road.
Thank you.
And would I be able to split my time up between the budget discussion and the Second Amendment rights section? So I had 2 issues I'd like to discuss.
As long as you can get it in, I would say within the 3 minutes.
Well, 3 minutes per part.
No, 3 minutes.
Well, I'll try my best.
Thank you.
So, talking about the 2012 budget here, one of the things Paul York just mentioned was that we'd be eliminating the equipment replacement funds. And reality is, all you're doing is solving a problem today and to basically create a bigger problem in the future. You can't just keep robbing these equipment funds, I mean, unless you expect your equipment to never break down. And so, you might work at solving a little bit of a problem today, but the reality is it's going to come back and bite you in the future, and it's going to bite harder. So I would be against eliminating equipment replacement funds. Additionally, we mentioned that there's an 11% loss of the tax base, and therefore the tax rate has to go up again. I'd like to remind everybody that there's a direct relationship between the tax base and the tax rate. When you increase that rate and you charge more people in taxes, that's less money they have to make on their mortgage payments, which is also less than the amount of money they have left over to get approved for a loan, which means that's less money that they have to get approved for a house, which means their offers are going to be lower, which is now going to further erode your tax base some more. Additionally, I'd like to mention that you know, if you need some toothpaste, it's very easy to go to Walgreens and buy some. Anybody can do it. But it takes a special kind of person to have a computer program and track where all the sales are happening, when they're happening, what stores and what brands, and where you can get a coupon. So you can walk into that store and get that toothpaste for free. The point is, it's very easy to fix your budget problems by cutting services. Where it really takes a leader is figuring out how you're going to cut costs. I know that there's a lot of talk right now about laying off a lot of public service workers, you know, policemen, firefighters. Reality is, if these guys aren't needed, if they're just excessive labor, they should have been laid off a long time ago. But to lay them off just because you have budget constraints is not the right way to go. Instead, you have to be looking for ways to cut costs, not to cut services. One thing Paul York mentioned in an email to me back February 13th, he said, something negatively affecting the city is employer-assessed taxes on Cadillac health insurance plans, of which the city will qualify. When I asked, well, what is a Cadillac health insurance plan? He said it's rich benefit levels. There's a lot of people living in this city right now that don't have health insurance and worrying about how they're going to put food on their table. So maybe it's not the right idea to ask these people to say, you know, I know that you're struggling with your health insurance, but you know what? You got to start providing and paying for this Cadillac health care plan that everybody down at City Hall gets. Something I just don't think is fair. Additionally...
You just jump in here, you got 1 minute.
Okay. I know a while back you're talking about buying up some houses just simply to destroy them. You know, it's true that we have a government-induced housing bubble and bursting, but hey, at least we got some houses out of it. So for the city to be using taxpayer funds to buy up these houses and just destroy them when you have private investors willing to line up, step in and say, yeah, we're going to help solve the problem, it seems like a waste of money to me. And I'd also like to mention, you know, it's not the taxpayer's job to provide recreation for children. So I'd like to provide a suggestion on the pool. Something we could do to keep the pool, but to reduce the cost, is have it open every other year. You may not need it every single year, but you can cut some costs by just having it every other year. And there was something mentioned on the Friday Beloit report
I need
about
you to start summing up too.
about basically banning the rights. It'll be on your agenda in November, and I'm out of time, so I can come back and talk about it then.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C this evening? If please step forward, state your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Beloit Sanders. I'm the assistant pastor of New Life Ministries on 1400 Harvey Avenue. I come tonight as a very concerned citizen. I do want to say to all of you guys, and Larry and you guys, Mr. York, you guys is working on the budget. I have 7 children, and sitting at home trying to work out the budget for my household is hard enough. And I know what you guys, well, I don't know what you're going through, but I can feel kind of what you're going through. But I want you guys, if you will, to take in consideration that we organized a PAWG, the Port Area Watch Group, about 2 or 3 years ago. And we really focused hard on working with the police department and getting to be more visible in the community. One of the things that we had in this community, we had a lot of people very afraid of reporting crime when they see it. They actually see the crime happening and they would not report it because they was afraid. The rumor is about Beloit. You can get away with crime in Beloit. The retaliation of the gang members and different ones like that will come back at you if you don't, if you tell it. So the citizens got very scared to report crime. So we began to work real hard with the police department to get them to bring out the foot patrols back to the city, get out into the neighborhood and walk around with some of the people that we've talked to in the neighborhood. I am a big believer to be part of the solution. You need to implant yourself in there. And I appreciate what the police department have done. It concerned me though when I've got information that some of the budget cuts that's going to be happening. We probably won't be replacing officers when they retire. We probably will not hire people in slots that's needed right now. I asked about a couple officers before, and they were out because of injuries, was left from shorthanded. So if crime happened, we have to call if the officers is supposed to be on the east side of town. If crime happened on the west side of town, it takes extra time for them to get over there. These are the things that, I want you guys to kind of really think about. I had a citizen over on Porter Avenue came to me and asked me, so what are we to do now? What's going to happen now? If we don't have this, the officers to come and support us, what are we supposed to do now? You got us to this place. Now, I want you to understand where I'm at now. Because now I got the hope into the people to believe into the police department. And now, what are we going to do now? And the same thing with the fire department. I'm speaking as a citizen of Beloit. I'm speaking for my police department and my fire department. Because their job is to protect and serve the citizens.
Mr. Sanders, let me just jump in. You got 1 minute. So
1 minute, thank you, sir.
Fair to everybody. So
1 minute. Protect and serve the citizens. And when, as a job, I'm a plant manager on a job, I cannot say I'm not going to put this guard on this machine just to get production out. And when we go into cutting our police officers and our fire departments, and we having these guys, if they're sick, if they're injured, who's going to replace them? So with all that, and I appreciate the time that I got, I want you guys to really consider that. I appreciate the swimming pool, appreciate all of that. That's great, that's grand. But if we don't have the protection, we won't have Beloit. We will not have Beloit. If all the houses catch on fire, we don't have no fire department. We got a lot of crime going on. Hey, all right, thank you guys.
thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Art Lefebvre, I live at 637 Wisconsin Avenue. I just want to make some observations. Number one, this council has a difficult task trying to balance the budget. But I think we can look at some observations. I believe, and the chief can help me if I'm mistaken, I believe now there's less officers on the street than we had 5 or 6 years ago. But if you look at the facts, we used to have shots fired calls years ago about bar time. You used to get that. You maybe didn't want to be on the streets around 2:30. I were getting shots fired, people killed at noon in the broad daylight. I know a lot of times the officers got to spend a lot of time just picking up spent casings shots fired, we go out, we find. So where are you going to cut? I don't know. But I think nothing affects quality of life other than public safety. It's your lion's share of the budget because it's the most important. So whether it's 6 officers or 5 officers, I know from personal experience, you can call in at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and the calls are stacked up. If it's not a hot call, last time I called, I got a call back at 9:30 in the evening. Called in about 4:35, no big call, trespassing. Matter of fact, on coach's ball field. But when you call, you got to ask 911 or dispatch, not 911 because it's not emergency. Should I stick around and they'll usually tell you, well, we're stacked up. I don't know how many calls are stacked up at the beginning of the year or beginning of each shift. And I know the overtime must be great. So all I'm asking you can't have anybody doing public safety majority of times except firemen and policemen. You could maybe use recap or the weekend workers from the county to help maintain parks. You can't put them in a squad car. So I don't know how you're going to cut, but I think if you cut across the board, the police department, you're going to hurt the quality of lifestyle, which I think is already affected. I mean, what makes the paper in Beloit on the 3rd page would be frontline, and this sounds prejudice against Beloit, it's not, but it's true, I believe. What makes the paper in the Beloit Daily News on the 3rd page, if it happened in Janesville, would be front page. Shootings, and I understand a lot of them were lucky, nobody gets hurt, they're just shooting at houses, shooting at cars. So I don't know how you're going to do it, but I want you to look at what makes the most sense of cutting. I understand it's easiest to cut police and fire because they're the lion's share, but I believe they're the lion's share for a reason. Quality of lifestyle in Beloit. So I thank you for your time. Tough budget. Good luck on it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C?
Hi, I'm Ed Scoville, 1654 White Avenue. Just real quick, kind of give you a timeline of my life. 20 years ago in May, I left Beloit. I joined the Army, went to Germany, did my thing there, and I came back here. I was going to leave again after about a year here, but then I met my lovely wife, and we decided to stay here. And in doing so, I felt that this became quite the community to raise my family. Now, by taking away the police and the fire department, I think you're, as Mr. Lefebvre said, taking away from everything that we've worked so hard over the past 20 years to accomplish. So just a couple suggestions that I might like to throw out there. Has any supervisor that has a vehicle provided to them by the city given up that benefit? Why not consolidate some of the administration responsibilities at the BPD and FPD to spread the layoff wealth that we would see, basically, because we're talking about cutting patrolmen, not supervisors. Let's cut 3 supervisors and 3 patrolmen if we have to cut 6 people. There would still be 6 cuts, but it may lessen the impact on the street, which is where we're going to see the most effect. I mean, in all honesty, going back to my military side, you can't have an effective fighting force if all you have are generals. And nothing against Mike, because I think the pool is a great thing, but as I was driving home from work today, I saw trees being planted. Is that going to be cut out of the budget, upcoming budget, or are we going to continue to beautify an area that's going to be vandalized? Because we won't have the police out there to help stop that. And also, snow removal, doesn't our taxes cover that? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C?
Hello, my name is Jim Cronin, 1719 Emerson Street. I didn't come here prepared to speak at all. I represent one of the large user groups of one of the parks. I'm president of the Hockey Association. A lot of people don't know how much that facility gets used. And it's not just obviously the ice rink, but there's probably some creative ways we can look at how that facility gets used and how we use it. But it's like the gentleman said over here, if we have the parks, if we have the things for people to use, and as people come to the city of Beloit, I know police and fire are very important. I don't want any of those people to lose their jobs. But if we have activities for the kids to do, they're not going to be in trouble. Personally, at Beloit Youth Hockey, what we like to look at is keeping our costs as low as we can so we can get everybody involved. And I think now we're up to over 200 kids involved in our association, and it's not just boys, it's girls. Very successful program from the top down. And I can just speak from the hockey standpoint, but all youth organizations bring in a lot of money to the city. I ran a study just a couple weeks ago, and just the amount of money that we bring in from other communities, over $500,000. People come visit our city for tournaments, for games. If we lose things like this in the city, folks are going to go elsewhere for baseball or for hockey or for parks, you name it. Just the people in our association alone, if I had to go to Janesville for hockey or go to Rockford for hockey, I'm just using hockey as an example. Just the people we have involved in our association alone, if we went there and bought all our groceries and our gas and our food, it's probably close to $700,000 of income that is not staying in the city. So you add them both together, it's well over $1 million. That's the type of impact that the parks have to the city of Beloit. So, in closing, I heard a lot of different comments, and again, I know you guys have a tough job. Everybody kind of wants a little piece of the pie, but I know there's some tough decisions ahead, and hope we can all work it out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under item 4C this evening? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Heather Miller. I know that budget cuts are never a fun time. I worked a number of years working on budgets as well as a former member of the police department, so I'm well aware of the difficulty when it comes to budget cuts. I have some concerns. I know that we were told in various, during this budget planning, that the cost of accreditation is virtually a wash. When you take 3 sworn officers, pull them off the streets, and assist with the workings that are required for being one of the elite, one of the 5 in the state that are accredited, you're taking approximately 3 officers times 3 months of gross pay, which comes to over $40,000. That's a lot of money to take off our streets. On top of the fact you have to put in someone for overtime to cover those shifts. That's not a wash. We were also told that the patrol union was not in favor of a 10-hour program, a 10-hour scheduled day. I can tell you firsthand that for two contracts, it was number 1 and number 2 on the request wish list, and that was not addressed, second only to health care. There are hundreds of plans that you could come up with for 10-hour day plans. The 10-hour day, the gist of it is to put more officers on the street during the day, during the nights, without cost to the city. If you can put more people on the street for no additional cost, I can't understand the reasoning behind not doing it. We've asked for this time and time again. We've given this reasoning, and it's fallen on deaf ears. I know there were cuts talked about in regards to the typists in records. And for those that don't understand, the typists don't just type letters. The typists type dictated reports from the officers. Those reports for people who are taken into custody must be done at the time you are you are taken in. At the time that these people go to court, the reports have to be given to the courts. Therefore, the officer is incurring overtime waiting on a typist to transcribe these reports. We're literally paying overtime to officers to sit and watch television or work out until those reports are finished. So it's a domino effect. If you cut the typist, you pay the overtime to the officer to sit there and wait. We don't have an option. It's the courts that need the reports. Finally, what I'm wondering, we were told that 10% of patrol duties would be eliminated. I'm wondering how that boils down to the patrol officer themselves. Is it one less necessary traffic citation that gets written? Is this one less block captain that gets contacted? Or is it the mandated numbers go down? How is it that we're going to interpret 10% less per officer?
Let me just jump in. You got 1 minute, so.
I don't want to see public safety be cut. I know firsthand that it's difficult with the numbers that exist now. I know that in a catastrophic emergency, we wait. Police officers, firefighters wait for other jurisdictions. And it's difficult to explain to the families why we can't work any faster, why things don't get done faster. As a citizen, as someone on both sides, I can see the frustration, and I don't know how to explain to anyone our reasoning behind cutting 6 positions from firefighters or police when there are options that are falling on deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C?
My name is Carrie Doherty, 1018 Cleveland Street, and I'm a town of Beloit firefighter and EMT, and my husband is a City of Beloit police officer. Obviously, it's something near and dear to us as far as public safety and the impact that your cuts would have on our family in so many different ways. You look at officer safety, you have to understand that these guys put their lives on the line every single day they go to work. And to ask them to do it with less people to do their job, that's just not a fair thing to ask of them. You also have to understand that you are going to be drawing on other surrounding areas for support. When you have mutual aid, you know, it's going to affect Township. It's going to affect South Beloit. You know, are these cities able to afford to cover your public safety issues? I don't understand why certain cuts. I'm looking at your budget, and just 2 years ago, the city manager's office and the city attorney's office were run on respectively 40,000 and 30,000 less. I don't understand the increase in that, considering our public safety workers haven't gotten their contracted pay increase. Also, didn't know if something you guys have considered, how about a 0.5% tax, city tax? You know, nobody likes to raise taxes, but a 0.5% on a citywide tax, that would bring in income. So, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C this evening? Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4C this evening? Third and final call. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4C this evening? Seeing no one else, I would close the public hearing at this time. Is there any councilors' questions, comments, or discussion at this time? Seeing Councilor Noodle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming down tonight. This is, it is going to be a very difficult budget, and it's going to affect everyone in the city, some possibly more profoundly than others. And so I'm very glad that people are, I know it's not easy to come down here and talk, but I'm very glad that people are showing up and voicing their opinion. It's your city, and if we don't get your input, it's very hard to make some of these critical decisions. And we have not a lot of time to work on this. So please encourage more people to come down and talk. Obviously, as was mentioned earlier, we've got 2 more workshops next week, Monday and Tuesday. I'm sure the President will mention those again. So encourage folks to come down and talk about the issues that they care about. We are listening. We're interested. So thank you.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to thank everyone who's attended this evening to speak to us and also to be here to listen, observe, and hold us accountable for this difficult decision that we need to make. And I would like to encourage you to please feel free to contact us personally, especially if you have a little stage fright and maybe don't feel quite comfortable approaching the podium with the bright lights on. Please don't hesitate to contact us to help guide us as we make this decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lupke.
Again, I too want to thank you on behalf of all the councilors. It was good to hear from so many people tonight, but hopefully next Monday and Tuesday, if you have friends and others that want to speak, as Mr. Forrest said, please have them come. We have to cut $1.7 million, and we need your help. You are the citizens of Beloit, and we need your input. So hopefully we can continue to hear that before the November 7th vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'd like to move to item 5 at this particular moment. Item 5 is citizens' participation. Anyone wishing to speak under citizens' participation about anything that's not on the agenda, you can step forward at this time and give your name and address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to speak under citizens' participation this evening? Seeing none, I would like to close item 5, citizens' participation, and move to item 6, consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. Is there any item a councilor would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is from items 6A through 6C. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by DeForest, second by Lukey. Any councilor comments or discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. Item 7 is ordinances. Item 7A, please.
Proposed ordinance to repeal and recreate sections 1.10 and 1.11 and to amend section 25.04 sub 4 sub C of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Beloit pertaining to emergency management and continuity of government.
Assistant Attorney Krieger, I'm sorry.
I can clear out a room.
That did not sound right.
We're here on a second call for the ordinance from 2 weeks ago. Again, it's just an emergency management operation that sets up a scheme where we can operate our emergency management government and also to continue government in and of itself during the state of an emergency. I don't have any other comments to add other than what I did last week. If you have any questions or anything came up from the last meeting, I'd certainly be willing to answer them.
Okay, any council have any questions or comments? Motion by Vander Bogart. Second by Lukey. All those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh. Item 8 is appointments. The undersigned, Kevin D. Levy, duly elected President of the Beloit City Council, subject to confirmation by the Beloit City Council, does hereby appoint the following citizen members to the vacancy and terms indicated below. Said appointments being pursuant to nominations made and approved by the Appointment Review Committee at the regular meeting held October 10th, 2011. Alcohol Beverage License Control Committee, Frank J. Marsden, for a term expiring June 30th, 2014. Board of Appeals, Charles Kincaid, for a term ending May 31st, 2013. Merlin Busson as a first alternate for a term ending May 31st, 2014. Disabled Parking Enforcement Assistant Council, incumbent Rogers Spinell, to a term ending October 31st, 2014. To the Landmarks Commission, incumbent Rick McGrath, to a term ending October 31st, 2014, and incumbent Sherry Carley to a term ending October 31st, 2014. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Noonan, second by Haynes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the appointments pass. Item 9 is council activities and upcoming events, and I know it's coming back to me, but let me just start by saying it's been a long day. We've all been together since about 7:30 this morning in a workshop, and we did not get done till about 5:30 or something to 6. So if we all look a little bit off our game this evening, that's why. And trust me, I know everybody's name up here. It just kind of escaped me there. So with that, Councilor Spreitzer.
Just been working on the budget, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councilor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And what was your? No. Yeah, well, it has really been really challenging working on this. But I want to thank the staff. And I'd like to thank Manager Arft and all the citizens that have been participating, and so many people from across the whole organization that have shown up for the different meetings that we've had. It is going to be very intense, but I'm glad that we are having many opportunities, and I appreciate the manager creating that opportunity and that ability for people to voice their opinions and share that. So thank you very much for that, and I look forward to listening and trying to do the best we can for you. Thank you.
Councilor Lupke.
Saturday night, it was very nice to go to Horse White Park about 7:30 with my family and bump into John Winkleman and others and see those 2,000 or whatever number of pumpkins surrounding the gazebo. It really shows the character of Beloit, and just shows we had all kinds of people there from Beloit, from all walks of life, enjoying another neat event. So I hope this becomes an annual event. I want to thank Bill Dorr, Roger Bryden, and others who helped put this together. That's all. Thank you.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I enjoyed attending the Senior Health Fair and wanted to thank John Kurtz and that committee for organizing that event. I know it takes a lot of work. It was very impressive. One thing that I noticed was the layout was a little different this year, and that seemed to really make a difference in participants being able to get around easier and access all of the information booths that were there. I certainly learned a lot while I was there and enjoyed speaking to many of our residents. It was a fantastic turnout and a great event. So thank you to that hardworking volunteer committee that put that on. I also would like to officially recognize our very own Ryan Flanagan. Officer Flanagan was recently recognized and received an award for the Significant Program Award entry for the Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company program. This was a fantastic idea that he developed, where if there's a significant case involving things like missing children or stolen cars or in-progress crimes, that our police officers communicate with our radio dispatch city employees to kind of have more eyes on the problem. And I think that's a great problem-solving method, great indication of willingness to collaborate. So I just wanted to thank him for thinking out of the box and bringing that idea forward, and want to congratulate our department for embracing ideas that are out of the box. I think very highly of our police officers and all of our employees and their willingness to think out of the box to solve problems. I've appreciated hearing from many of our employees with out-of-the-box ideas and solutions for how to move forward in this budget, and continue to embrace those. Certainly respect input from all my constituents. Thank you.
Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, this last weekend I helped with the fall fiesta of the Merrill Park Community Garden. Right now it's the oldest or longest serving community garden in Beloit. Small one, but I think it's serving its constituents and that part of the community well. Thank you.
Good. Councilor Van der Bogart.
All kinds of activities, but I'll refrain from outlining them all right now. So.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to also echo a couple of the councilors' remarks as it relates to things. First of all, I would like to thank my colleagues on the City Council for giving your time and effort to serve down here, but not only that, but lately as we have several budget workshops that we've already had and some that's coming up, your diligence in asking the tough questions, thinking outside the box, as Councilor DeForest has said, and then also working together as a group, realizing that you get 7 people in a room with 7 different opinions and 7 different personalities. We've had a lot of fruitful discussions, and I want the public to know that. I also want to thank our staff for their job well done on putting the budget together, making those tough decisions before it comes to us, and then also for your quick turnaround. For those of you who may not know, there are times that this council has asked staff for information that we need 2 days later, and they're not the simple questions that we usually ask. So I want to thank staff for taking that time in doing that, but I also want to thank the employees, because in any budget process and anything that we go through, the employees also have an input, and several of you have stopped me along the way and give me your input, whether it be good, bad, whether we agree with it or disagree with it. At least you take the time to let us know. That shows me that you care about the city, and that you want to truly best for the city. And that is one comment that I hear a lot from the employees when I talk to them or they talk to me. They always start out by saying, we love the city and we care about this city and we are going to do what we can for the city, before they even state their concerns. So that shows me your dedication for the city. So I want to publicly thank you for that as well. But as we move forward in this tough budget process, we want everyone to continue to give us your feedback. We have a couple of workshops coming up. We want to hear from the citizens. Give us your feedback, because ultimately it's going to affect all of us. And when I say all of us, we're not sitting here as a 7 that any decision that we make, we're going to ultimately be affected by it as well. So I want to keep that in the minds of a lot of people as well, because I think at some time we might lose sight of that, or some people may lose sight of that, saying the 7 council people really don't care about what happens here. But ultimately, whatever we decide, we are also going to be affected by it as well. So that's the way that I think the 7 of us kind of look at it, that we first ask is, can we live with this decision? Because we know that is going to affect our household. It's going to affect our lives just as well. So I want to make sure that that's clear. But overall, I want to just thank everyone for the professionalism that you've shown throughout this whole process. We have a ways to go, several more workshops, several more conversations. So continue to do that, and let's all continue to keep Beloit first. And I think at the end of the day, we'll all come out winners. So thank you. And that concludes the council comments and activities. Item 10 is city manager's presentation. I don't believe there is none this evening. Item 11 is reports from boards and city officers. 11A, please.
A resolution awarding composting bid and authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for services.
Chris Walsh, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, the city of Beloit, we went out for our curbside composting of yard waste twice this fall. Just as background, just so you know, the city collects, and this is the guys at the curbside program, about 1,000 ton of yard waste annually. And that would be from the sticker program and from the free program, the 3-week fall program. So first time we went out for a proposal, we did a request for proposal. It was issued for a 5-year yard waste program. We rejected both bids that came in. The second RFP that I did was for a 3-year contract, and it was only for the processing of the yard waste that the crews collect. So the issues within this RFP, this contract, would be to compost residential yard waste generated by the residents, however, only collected by the city crew. Through the yard waste sticker program and the fall cleanup. That program would reflect a $52,000 annual savings, or $156,000 over the 3-year term of this contract. We have just also as some of you might not know, but Leafland was the proposal that we are recommending the resolution for. And the city of Beloit has actually done business with Leafland Compost Center since 1991, when we very first started a pilot project. Leafland would provide us up to 50 yards of mulch for the city's Department of Public Works, depending on where we would need it, at no charge. Residents would have the option of utilizing both bedrock grinding on the east side of Beloit and Leafland Compost Center on the west side of Beloit. Currently, bedrock does not charge residents, and for the remainder of this year, Leafland Compost would not charge residents. I am not certain what the vendors would do next year. That would be up to them to negotiate what, with the residents independently, what they would want to have done. So the annual cost, and I'm just going to jump right down to that, is on a per ton basis. And if we have 1,000 ton at $16 a ton, it would be $16,000. So the cost of the contract for 3 years would be approximately $48,000. So, let's see. The resolution, we are asking that you accept the resolution awarding compost bid and authorization for City Manager Larry Arf to enter into a contract with Leafland Compost Center at this time.
Okay. Is there a motion? Second. Motion by Schweitzer, second by Haynes.
Mr. President, could I add
Sure.
one? Just wanted to add one clarifying point. For a number of years, this contract has included a provision that residents can drop off their yard waste directly at Leafland. The city was paying about $40,000+ a year for that service, and as you can see in the new bid, the proposal was to go to $52,000 a year for that service. When we got looking around talking to some of the other vendors, we found bedrock grinding out there that was not charging anyone to dump yard waste at their facility, and I believe they're open 7 days a week.
Correct.
At that location, and suddenly it's one of those things, the light bulb just went on. We were buying something here we really didn't need to buy. These services are available to residents, and even if these compost centers begin charging a small fee, it would be a fraction of the cost for the few residents that use this service, rather than the city running all of this through our solid waste fund. So this is a huge savings that will accrue to the city, not only for these 3 years, but going forward, and the city will still be able to deposit the yard waste that we collect will be taken out to Leafland, at least for the 3 years that are part of this contract, and at some other facility in the future.
Thank you. Councilor DeForest.
That's fine. That was the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 7-0. 11C, please.
A resolution approving farm leases between the City of Beloit and Walsh Agricultural Holding, LLC.
Mr. Yankee.
Good evening. After contracting for several years with our existing farmer, staff felt it was time to go out and rebid land that's owned by the City of Beloit and the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation in the Willowbrook and the Gateway Industrial Parks. Bids went out this past September 20th, and we received bids from 6 different growers. Bids range from $120 an acre at the low end and $285 an acre at the high end. Our current lease rate is $153 an acre, so this represents a pretty significant increase. I would like to point out that Chris Walsh, who just spoke, is related to one of the members of the LLC from Walsh Farms. However, she is not involved any way within that business. We checked with the city attorney, did some research, and there is no violation of any of our city policies by entering into this particular lease contract. So with that, staff is recommending that we accept the highest bid at $285 an acre to Walsh Agricultural Holdings, LLC.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by Lukey, second by Noonan. Councilor DeForest.
I'm glad to see that we sent this out to bid. Will that be our process going forward?
It's a 2-year lease with a 2-year renewal.
So that's our
At
plan.
our option. So absolutely, we'll at least every 4 years.
All right, just wanted to make sure we didn't revert to what we were doing before.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 7-0. Item 12, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by DeForest. Second by Haynes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.